Hello, Year 10. Welcome to my latest video lesson on planning your speech. Now, I'm going to tell you now that you need to stop right there if you haven't already written and sent to your English teacher the introduction to your speech. Stop it right now. Go back, write your introduction, email it, and then you get the reward of seeing this face again, which I'm sure you're all missing a lot, which is why I just thought I'd appear in this tiny box so you could soak up a bit of my beauty. Anyway, today we're moving on to planning your speech. So what we're going to do is make sure that before you start writing it, you know exactly where your speech is going, and that you can use the research that you've put your time into. So that's really important. You've done all that research. We need to make sure that you use it in your speech and that your speech is in a good order. So our keywords today are content, order, and impact, and we're going to come back to those shortly. But before we move into our learning, just a reminder of why we're doing all of this, where it's going, and so on and so forth. So your task, as you know, over the next 6 weeks is to prepare yourself for your GCSE spoken language assessment. So this assessment is going to take place when we return to school and must be prepared for at home. I cannot stress to you how important it is that you complete these tasks every week, and that when we come back to school, we can say, right, where are you up to with your speech? Let's go straight into presenting. So then we can get on with teaching you all of the information that you need to be able to sit the English language exam. So we don't want this time to be wasted. We want to make the most of it and make sure that it's not impacting your education. So, as you know, in order to achieve your spoken language qualification, you must present a 3 to 5 minute speech to your class and be prepared to listen to and respond to questions your classmates could ask you. So, as I said, you should have been thinking from Miss Robinson's fantastic lessons, by the way, weren't they great? Thank you, Miss Robinson. You should be thinking about using effective language devices. Miss Robinson went through all of those with you, and you should have already put some of those into your introduction. So today then, we are thinking about the content of our speech, the order of our ideas, and the impact on the reader. Okay, so the content is the information that you actually put into your speech. So what you're actually writing and talking about. And that's why the research part of this has been so important. So we're going to be really looking closely today at how to make the most of the content of your speech. The order means how you sequence and organize your ideas so that they make sense. Okay, so you're thinking about making sure that you are presenting information to your audience in a way that they can follow. So you're assuming they don't know anything about your topic. If you go in at a high level and talk about the impact of homophobia, then if somebody who doesn't know what homophobia is sitting in your audience, they're going to be very confused. So it's really important that we think about how we order those ideas. But also, as you might have picked up from Miss Robinson's lesson on introductions, that actually you could order your ideas so that you're using order for impact. So thinking about perhaps putting something really shocking at the start to engage the listener and the audience, and then coming back in with some key information that helps explain that. So that leads really well onto our last keyword, which is impact. And that's the effect you want to have on your audience. So as you're doing this speech, think about, what do you want them to go away and think? For most of you, the aim is that whatever the type of discrimination you're writing about, you want your audience to go away and think, that's so wrong, that needs to be gotten rid of, how awful for those people, I can make a difference and I can stop that. Okay, so that impact, how you get there, how you get to that point, is through what you're writing about, how you're writing it, and the order in which you put those ideas across. So that's what we're going to be looking at today through planning. Okay, so my face is now blocking the PowerPoint. I'm going to get rid of it. Missed you all. I'm obviously still going to be here. You just won't have the joy of this in your screen. Au revoir. Okay, so get out of the way. So, as we've said before, you are assessed on demonstrating presentation skills in a formal setting, listening and responding appropriately to spoken language, so responding to questions, and using standard English. So we just always want to bear those in mind. But in particular, you will notice how both of our learning objectives are relevant in the marking criteria. So this top one here, here's my mouth. For pass, you express straightforward ideas and information. Straightforward ideas and information. So you can talk about your topic simply. Whereas for a merit, you would be expressing challenging ideas and information. You'll be going into more detail about your topic and the different ways it can affect people. And a distinction expresses sophisticated ideas of information, a sophisticated repertoire of vocabulary. So that's thinking about those language devices, thinking about your word choices, and going into lots of detail about how your area of discrimination affects society and how it could be changed. Similarly, in the PASS, if you look at organising ideas, the PASS makes an attempt to organise and structure presentation. Okay, so there's some thought about what you're saying when, but it's not particularly for effect. Whereas for a merit, the organisation is really clear and appropriately meets the needs of the audience. So that means like you're giving the information that they need when they need it so that they can follow your train of thought. Whereas a distinction starts to use an effective range of strategies to engage the audience. So that's what I'm talking about, that introduction being so important, getting that into your teacher as soon as possible, because organising and structuring this presentation, part of that is using your introduction to hook the reader in and really engage them. So that's you know in your head which one of those you're heading for, pass, merit or distinction. You have a think about which one of those you'd like to achieve and think about what you're going to need to focus on today to get into that band for content and organisation. Okay, so what you've done so far is chosen and researched the topic of your presentation. You've learned about effective techniques for speech writing and you've written an effective introduction. What's next? This lesson is bringing all your research together, planning your speech and ordering your ideas, and then moving on to writing your speech with help. Okay, so this lesson we're really working on planning. The next 2 lessons you're going to be writing. So you don't need to do that on your own. We're going to bring you more video lessons. Yay! So they will be coming your way to make sure that you know what you're doing every single step of the way. So these were all of the things that I asked you, or you were asked by your class teacher, to research. Okay, so now what we want to think about is, have you got enough? You don't want to get to a point where you're midway through a paragraph and you suddenly realise, I don't know that, because what you'll do is you'll lose the flow of your writing, or you just won't research it and then you won't go into as much detail. And as you've just seen, expressing more complicated ideas improves your grade. So that research is really important to make sure that you can write in detail. So make sure that you have done all of those bullet points, and if you haven't, then maybe make a note that you want to do that at the end of this lesson before you start planning, or pause this video now and just catch up on that research, any bits that you've missed, go back and get the information you need, and then press play again. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is plan to make sure that we are using all of the research that we've got and that we don't have any gaps in our research. So in paragraph one, this comes after your introduction. So you've done your introduction, you've emailed that to your teacher, and now you're moving into the main body of your speech. Paragraph one, you need to outline general reasons for choosing the topic you have chosen. So remember we talked about discrimination, and you could pick a specific area of discrimination that you felt particularly strongly about. So we talked about Islamophobia, racism, body dysmorphia, what else was there? Ableism, ageism, sexism, any type of discrimination, you could choose that topic. But in this particular paragraph, you need to explain to your audience why you feel so strongly about that type of discrimination. Why have you chosen it? Now, it's absolutely fine to draw on personal experience and explain that you know somebody or whatever that has led to you caring passionately about this subject. But in order for your audience to trust in your opinions, you want to support those ideas with facts. So, for paragraph 1, the research needed is how many people are affected by the type of discrimination that you're about to talk about. And if you've got any other facts and statistics about this kind of discrimination, so the different ways in which people are affected, how it impacts their life, anything that you know that has led you to feel so passionately about what you have chosen. Okay, next, I want to remind you about what Miss Robinson said just checking I was recording. Thank goodness I am. I want to remind you about what Miss Robinson said about using language devices. So, Dave Forrester, remember him? Here he is. What a guy. Hi, Dave. So can you tell I've been in lockdown too long, year 10? Let me out. So direct address, alliteration, vocabulary, emotive language, fact, opinion, rhetorical question, emotive language again, potentially also exaggeration should be in there, statistics, triple, evidence, which we've talked about, which is your research, and repetition. So you want to remember Dave at all times, because even in your planning, you want to make sure that you've got a mix of those language devices in there. So remember, paragraph 1 is outlining general reasons for choosing this topic and talking about why you feel so strongly about this type of discrimination. So I'm going to show you an example. I'm imagining that I've chosen sexism as my area of discrimination to talk about. Okay, so this is how I would plan for paragraph 1. First of all, please notice how few words are on the screen right now. I'm pretty much using note-making form of the headlines of that paragraph. So the research that I have got is that sexism affects 50% of the population and that women are on average paid 25% less than men. Equally, suicide is the biggest killer of men in the UK. So therefore, sexism affects everyone, men, women, and children. That's my research for paragraph 1. That's the information that I have learned that is relevant to this paragraph. So I've written that into my plan. Now, what I need to do is make sure that when I write that up, I'm being interesting and engaging for the audience. So in green, I've put a little reminder to myself that when I start writing that paragraph, I need to include emotive language and anaphora, which was one of the more complicated language techniques in Miss Robinson's lesson. Okay, so I'm reminding myself I need to use those language techniques. And then at the bottom, I put creates problems such as ... Now, I haven't, other than obviously the suicide, that's a big issue, done any research on the problems created by sexism. So that's also a note for me now to go back to planning. I'm really sorry, year 10, if you can hear my dog snoring in the background. It's extremely loud. Reggie. Oh, there it was. Oh dear, sorry. Okay, so that's a reminder to me that I need to go back and research what problems are caused by this. Otherwise, when I start to write up paragraph 1, I'm going to forget what, sorry, I'm going to forget what things I need to include, and if I've not got that information, then I will lose the flow in my writing. Okay, so that's how I would plan for paragraph 1. Now remember, at any point you can stop and pause this video. You should also have this in your class charts, okay? So for example, if you wanted to plan paragraph 1 now, you might want to pause this, make notes, then check it against the example. Or, obviously, you can listen to the whole of the lesson and then go back and pause it at the relevant slides. I'll also obviously put this PowerPoint in class charts so you can download it and use it as you see fit. Okay, so we're going to move on to paragraph 2. Now, paragraph 2 asks for a personal anecdote, which just means a little story. Anecdote means little story about your type of discrimination. So, the research needed for this is someone this discrimination has happened to, or if you have an experience that you feel comfortable talking about, you could write about your own experience. It could be a friend's experience. You might find it helpful to have a quote from somebody about their experience, but also then some wider statistics on how this has affected groups of people beyond this anecdote. So I'm not the only one this has happened to, or this isn't the only person this has happened to, this happens to X amount of people. So again, if you don't have those bits of research, at this point you might want to make a note of what you need to find out, or pause the video and go and find it out. In my example, okay, I'm going to talk about a friend who has experienced being whistled at in the street and feeling ashamed by that unwanted attention. And then my statistic to back that up. So therefore, that bottom bullet point here, my statistic to back up how many people are affected beyond that anecdote is 80% of women have experienced some kind of sexual harassment. Okay. I'm then also going to talk about a friend who lost their father to suicide, and there I'm going to use emotive language and rhetorical question to really engage the reader and the audience in how awful that situation is. And then my statistic to back that up is that men accounted for 3/4 of all UK deaths by suicide in 2018. And 75% of men feel unable to discuss their feelings. And then I would add, to finish off that paragraph, my opinion and why I think it's such an important issue. Okay, so again, look at how little information, I'm not writing in full sentences other than the research that I need, and then I've got in green what language techniques I need to use. Okay, you might also find it helpful, for example, for where my opinion of this is, you might want to put a little word bank in and say, shocking, horrifying, upsetting, and just, to give yourself some synonyms. Okay, paragraph 3, you need to do a case study or a news story about your type of discrimination. So give an example of how on a wider scale, someone else's life has been impacted by your type of discrimination. So you need to include key facts about the story, quotes from people involved and what happened as a result, and give your opinion about this and explain what we should learn from it. So that research needed then is all of that information about the case study. Example, so for sexism, there was a campaign to get a woman on the British banknote that resulted in the person who started the campaign receiving death threats. Okay, that's all I know about that case study. So I've now put in red, more info needed. Was she successful? What happened next? Was anyone prosecuted for the death threats? Things like that. So I need to do more research on my case study, find quotes and things like that. Likewise, I know that laws have been passed, but men and women still do not receive equal pay. I need to now go away and find out example companies. Are there any statements? And then I always need to end with my opinion and some Dave Forrester. So here I'm going to use emotive language and a triple. Okay, paragraph 4, we now want to get on to describing the ideal world or society without this type of discrimination. So I want you to think about how much better the world would be without your type of discrimination, explain what would be different, so what that world would look like and how people's lives could be improved. So research needed. Are there any countries or examples of communities where your discrimination type isn't a problem? That's so interesting. I really want to know, is there a country where sexism isn't a problem? Are there any quotes from celebrities or famous people about why this has got to change? So I could use something from that Emma Watson speech that we looked at back in our second and third lessons. So there's some more research for me to do there. So for me, what I think an ideal word would look like, men talk openly and can get support about their feelings. Boys grow up comfortable to show emotion, and women are safer. Equal pay improves quality of life for everyone. And then I would give my opinion, and now I'm going to start to use some of those more complex ideas and language devices from Miss Robinson's lessons: ethos, pathos, and logos. So I'm going to look at the different ways I can appeal to my audience there, okay? So that's, again, a small bit of information. So if you put your plan together, you're not looking at huge amounts of writing, okay? Every time you're just looking, have I got the relevant information that I need from my research? And then making a note of what further research you might need to do and adding in those Dave Forrest devices to remind you to use effective language techniques. So there is a reason that the key words were in the order that they were in today. Because without that content, without the information that is going into your speech, you cannot do anything else. So that's why I'm saying to you, double check, have you got enough research? Do you know enough about this topic? And if you haven't, you are going to have time to go back and find it out. Then you want to think about the order. So using the plan ideas that we've given you in this PowerPoint, and again, they'll be in class charts, but also then thinking, lastly, our third word, of the impact that you want to have on your audience. So in the plan that we're going to put on class charts and that I've talked through today, paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4, that's a logical sequence. I want you to think about, if you think you want to create more impact, if you think a different structure might be helpful. I think you can definitely create distinction level impact with the structure given, but you can play around with it if you're really pushing for those top grades. But what I've definitely given you is a logical sequence and structure for your ideas. None of that matters if you haven't got the content. Content, order, then think about impact. So your job for today, if you are aiming for a pass, is to start to plan out paragraph by paragraph what you will write. Just bullet point what information you'll need or be writing about in each paragraph, and see if you've got any gaps in your research that you need to fill. When you've identified the gaps that you need to fill, find them out. So after you've started your plan, if you notice gaps, then go back and do any missing research that you need. Then go through your plan again, add in all that information, add in that missing research, and then have a check, have you included all the different Dave Forrester devices? And finally, a great tip would be to use a thesaurus to make a word bank of different synonyms that you could use to improve your vocabulary. If you notice in your plan you keep writing the same word, then research some others, because it's not going to be engaging for the audience to listen to the same words over and over. Okay, so if you are aiming for a pass, this is what you need to do today. So at the end of this video, come back to this slide or check your class charts, because it should be in there. If you are aiming for a merit or distinction, you need to do all of these tasks and these tasks. So play around with the order of your ideas. If you want to create more impact and think about the effect that you're going to have on the audience, Think about what will create the most impact and play around with where you put the case study or where you put an anecdote. As Miss Robinson said, you might start with a case study, mix it up, but you must make sure it makes sense. There's no point you starting with a case study about the horrors of sexism if you've got somebody in your audience who doesn't understand what sexism means. So you have to make sure that your ideas make sense. Once you've made your plan, keep the plan next year and re-watch the good examples of effective speeches. So perhaps go back to one of those Princier and ensure you've magpied the best bits. So you might add in language devices that you like, that you see in those videos. And go back to Miss Robinson's lesson on effective language techniques and look and see if you've included the more sophisticated language devices Miss Robinson taught you. So there's lots of ways there that you can start to shift your plan up into a higher level. Remember, in Miss Robinson's lesson, you agreed that these are the success criteria for a great speech. So once you've got your plan, pause this video on this slide and check if you think you are hitting all of those bullet points. At this point, you haven't actually started writing your speech. This is what you are planning for. All of these things here in this bulleted list is what you're planning for. So, for example, memorable. What are you doing in your speech to make it memorable? Entertaining. Have you made it entertaining? Is it powerful and passionate? Could you plan a word bank of powerful and passionate words? Okay, so just have a little think. Do you think your plan is achieving these success criteria? And that is it for today's lesson. Wasn't that fabulous? Well done me, and well done you if you've managed to listen for that long. So coming up on Friday the 1st of May, you have time now to continue to complete your plan and any final research needed. So if you have got lots of gaps in your research, then on Friday, once this video lesson's finished, you should still have a good hour and a half to 2 hours. But also on Friday, you can use today's time and Friday to continue to complete your plan and final research needed. Respond to your teacher's feedback and improve your introduction. So you should have heard back from your teacher and be responding to feedback if you have submitted any work. No video lesson on Friday, so you can always come and watch this one again if you loved it that much. Oh, how exciting. On Wednesday, the 6th of May, you will have a video lesson with Miss Mitchell-Brady on writing your paragraphs out in full. So in that lesson, you will start to write your speech and you're going to start to add more detail to your plan, look at how to put your opinion across effectively, how to incorporate those language devices that Miss Robinson taught you, and Miss Mitchell-Brady is going to go through what a good one looks like with you, a waggle, as we like to call it in English. And then you can see in teeny tiny font, I wrote, woohoo, because I know how much you are loving this whole unit of work and your home learning with English. So continue to feel the joy, get those creative juices flowing, writing that plan, doing your research, have confidence in what you've got to say, because we cannot wait to hear it. And that is it from me. Have a lovely day. And I will see you soon.